Okay.
We're ready to
Well,
go. Let's do it.
all right. Well, at this time, I'd like to welcome our members of the media and those viewing the live stream to today's press briefing with representatives from Charlottesville Area Transit, Kinetics Transportation Group, and Kimley Horn. My name is Joe Rice. I'm with the City Communications Office. We're hosting the Zoom webinar, and I'll be moderating today's Q&A between our panelists and the media. And just a couple notes before I hand it over to Kyle Irvin, CAT's marketing coordinator. After the presentation, we will give our media representatives two opportunities to ask questions, and both opportunities will include your initial question and one follow-up question. We appreciate your participation. And with that, I'll hand it over to you, Kyle.
All right. Well, I am glad to join everyone today. We know this meeting's being recorded. My name is Kyle Irvin. I'm marketing coordinator with Charlottesville Area Transit, and I am excited today because we are going to present to you some route proposal changes, some big things happening over at CAT that will greatly improve our ridership frequency and our overall experience for you riders. Since I've already been introduced, I'm going to hand introductions over to Jim Baker, and then we can go down the line. And Jim, whenever you're ready and we have the presentation on screen, you can go ahead and give everyone a brief overview of the details and the nitty-gritty of what these route changes mean for CAT.
Yes, hi everybody. My name is Jim Baker with Kinetics Transportation Group. We've been working closely with Garland Williams and his team over the past several months on potential service changes. And I don't know, Garland, do you want to give some introductory remarks before we get into the meat of it?
Yeah, thank you, Jim. I would just say that bringing on Kimley Horn, represented by Ben Chambers, and Jim Baker over Kinetics Transportation Group out of Atlanta has been a very fruitful endeavor for us. After coming out of when we went into the pandemic, there was concern, like most transit agencies, about how do we get, when we come out of the pandemic, what do we do to make the system better for all that use it? So one of the key things I've asked Jim and Ben to do as a part of our optimization study was take a look at where we were and where we want to be. So this is kind of our push to stem the tide of our declining ridership over the past 5-6 years, put a floor in, and then allow us an opportunity to build from here. This is not the end all to be all. The region is doing a visioning study. So this was designed as a temporary measure over the next couple of years while that study is done to prevent us from having continued rapid decline in ridership. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim, and we're going to get started.
Right. All right, if we can pull up the PowerPoint. Okay, so what we would like to do today is just go over the service proposals for the next, for FY22, which would be changes that are proposed for this September. Next. I thought it'd be good to start with just kind of a little bit of background as far as the current CAT transit service in Charlottesville and Albemarle County. Pre-COVID, CAT was running 13 bus routes. You can see there's service generally from 6 a.m. to midnight. 7 days a week service, but very limited service on Sunday with just 4 routes. And you can see some accessibility metrics on this slide that generally, over 62,000 people, residents, were within a quarter mile of bus stops to the CAT network there. And then when COVID hit, CAT, made some service changes like every other transit agency in the country. One of the things CAT did is they did not change their service coverage. So those 62,500 people still had access to weekday service. But they reduced frequencies, they reduced evening service, they eliminated Sunday service to provide for a cleaning day for the buses, Generally, it was about a 30% reduction in service hours, which was very typical to what I think a lot of transit agencies CAT size were doing in this time period in response to lower ridership, the ability to find bus drivers, things like that. Next slide. As Garland mentioned, ridership has been declining for CAT. These are some numbers from the National Transit Database. It's a database that the Federal Transit Administration puts out every year. And you can see back in 2013, CAT was carrying over 2.4 million riders a year. And that's down to just over 2 million riders in 2018. Meanwhile, hours of bus service have been going up. So what that means is that there has been declining service productivity for CAT. So that's why, Garland initiated this system optimization study, knowing that at some point we'll be coming out of COVID. Are there some things that can be done as CAT comes out of COVID to shore things up and better serve where residents want to travel in Charlottesville and Albemarle County. Next. So we sat down with the CAT team there, and a number of objectives came out there as far as things to look at as we looked at service changes. There's been a request before for service on South First Street. There's a need to serve the center on Rio Road that just recently opened up. Certainly a very strong desire to restore Sunday service to get that back to pre-pandemic levels or better, to get back evening service. And also just, there's a lot of areas that just have 60-minute service frequencies in the corridor. We're asked to look at ways to provide 30-minute or better service frequencies along some of the major travel corridors, which we've identified here: the US 29 corridor, Avon Street, 5th Street, Richmond Road. There were some routes that had worse than 60-minute frequencies between buses, so we looked at shoring those up so that there's no route that operates worse than 60-minute spacing between buses. And then the trolley, the free trolley, is such an important route in CAT. That service was reduced in response to COVID, so there's a desire to get that back to 15-minute service frequencies like it used to run pre-COVID. Next slide. So working with Garland and his team, we have a number of service proposals. And this is just kind of a summary of kind of the highlights of what those proposals accomplish. We've improved improved service between the UVA campus and the hospital to all the employment and everything along the US 29 corridor. We've proposed introducing some new crosstown service from South Charlottesville to US 29. So no longer will you need to travel from South Charlottesville to downtown, transfer to a bus, and to continue up to US 29. You can do that all on the same bus. We've identified a number of routes where we're proposing to operate at 30-minute or better frequencies all day long. So less waiting time for your bus. We have some new service coverage, a new weekend service that doesn't exist today, and as well as just new coverage in general there. We have some new service coverage in the county along Mill Creek Drive that currently has no transit service today, as well as some new service coverage in the city with some proposed changes around the UVA campus area, as well as on First Street South as well. So some new coverages and some better frequencies in some of the more heavily traveled corridors and expanded weekend service. Next slide. This slide here just kind of gives you a little bit of of the metrics as to what's achieved with the service proposals. And you'll see that in terms of overall population accessibility to transit, it's, some slight improvements, a little bit better, more people have, access to transit on weekdays, a bit more on Saturdays and Sundays. But really, I think it's a 30-minute or better service where you see some striking achievements here, where 20%, there's a 20% increase in people that will have access to 30-minute or better service. They'll be within a quarter mile of a bus stop that's running at least every 30 minutes, if not better. And you can see there, those are, comparable improvements as well for access for minority population groups and low-income population groups. Next slide. So what we have here is just a series of slides that just kind of goes route by route, a brief summary as to what the proposed changes are, and these maps show the proposed new alignments for each route. And with Route 1, there's really no significant alignment change, but what's new with Route 1 is this route currently operates weekdays only, and what's proposed here is to add Saturday service to this route. So people along this route will now be able to catch the bus on Saturdays. Route 2, this is a significant change, one of the more significant changes that's proposed, where it's providing 30-minute service along Avon Street, with every other bus splitting to go through 5th Street Station in Willoughby or down to Mill Creek Road into the Piedmont Virginia Community College. So you have that 30-minute service on that trunk portion of this route here, and you have new coverage as well in the county down along Mill Creek Road. Next slide. This route here, no alignment changes as far as the service that's on 5th Street today, but what is different is that this route will be a 30-minute frequency route all day long on weekdays. And this route currently does not operate on Sunday. We're proposing that it does operate on Sunday. So people along 5th Street will now be able to use transit on Sundays with this change. And this is just the existing eastern part of what's currently the Route 3. And, there's no changes to this. It's just, still maintaining the service to this area of Charlottesville that they get today. Next. Route 4, a route that goes from Willoughby Shopping Center to UVA Hospital to downtown. No changes in the alignment, but providing a consistent 60-minute service frequency on this route. Currently, this is one of the routes for midday, and weekends it's operating at a 70-minute frequency. So it's getting it on a 60-minute frequency, and that's important because all the routes in this proposal are operating at either a 15-minute frequency, a 30-minute frequency, or a 60-minute frequency. So that allows at that downtown transit center to pulse buses in a manner, schedule them in a manner where they all arrive at consistent times to minimize that transfer time between buses. We couldn't really do that with a 70-minute route, but we can with a 60-minute route. Route 5, this route has some significant changes. It would start at Fashion Square Mall, go to Barracks Road, and provide some new service that currently does not exist down to the UVA Hospital complex, and it would be operating 30-minute frequencies weekdays and Saturdays. Route 6, this is a route with a proposed alignment change where it's providing new service that currently does not exist along 1st Street South. And it would just be operating consistently between Willoughby Square and downtown at weekdays and Saturdays. Route 7, this is a real workhorse route for CAT. It really carries a lot of riders here. And what we proposed here is that this route be extended to Walmart and operate 7 days a week. Currently, Walmart's served by another route, Route 5. So what this means is someone can get downtown and they can stay on the same bus to get to Walmart and back. So that's a big change there. It would operate at 30-minute frequencies, and we're also proposing to supplement that with additional service when needed during the weekdays, during the peak periods between Barracks Road and downtown. So you actually have a 15-minute service between those two locations. Then Route 8. This is what's proposed as a new crosstown route that currently does not exist today. I mentioned this earlier here, where it would be, service from South Charlottesville, from Willoughby Shopping Center, up through the UVA Hospital complex, and then on up to the US 29 corridor to the shops at Stonefield. So it's a way for people to travel, north-south through Charlottesville without having to go downtown and without having to transfer to a different bus route. Route 9, this is a route as well that has some fairly significant alignment changes proposals, where it basically would provide service along Rose Hill, and it's extended up to Fashion Square Mall. So it's another option if you're traveling between Fashion Square Mall and downtown. In addition to the Route 7, this would be another option to travel between those two locations. Route 10, this route serves the Richmond Road corridor. It serves Pantops and the hospital complex. And we've cleaned up this alignment a bit. There were some large one direction loops and patterns in this route there that we've cleaned up, but probably more importantly there, we've improved the frequencies on weekdays to where it'll operate 30-minute frequencies. Right now it operates only once an hour. So this will provide more service to the employment out along the Richmond Road corridor there. And then Route 11, it's some minor changes to this route alignment as well. Probably the biggest change is that we're serving the center on Rio Road when the buses are traveling northbound. So again, another option between Fashion Square Mall and downtown just to get to that US 29 corridor. And then finally, the trolley. I mentioned earlier that this was a route that CAT had to reduce its frequencies due to COVID. So, we want to get that back up at its 15-minute frequency. So, trolley buses running every 15 minutes and back to its, its original alignment through the UVA campus there. So another key route in the CAT system that we want to restore back to how it was operating before. And then last, just next steps. So I don't know, Garland, maybe you want to speak more about the next steps and how this, the upcoming meetings and such?
Sure. Thanks, Jim. So part of what we're trying to make sure that everybody knows is that there is a process that we have to follow. When we are working through major system changes, there's different levels of authority and approvals that we have to get. One of the final ones that we'll have to get once we make all the final adjustments here is from the city and the county. Going back to them, they basically already given us budget authority, but want to make sure that we get their authority to kind of move forward with the final adjustments. We're also going to do a Title VI analysis, which is required with what we are considering these are major changes. So the Title VI analysis will be complete after we have 2 public meetings and get feedback from the public. So we need to make sure that the Title VI analysis doesn't have an adverse effect on the minority or low-income populations. So once the 2 meetings are done in July, we have 2 tentative dates that we want to provide to you now. Friday, July 16th, is going to be proposed for a noon meeting. And then Wednesday, July 21st, at 6 o'clock meeting. Both of them will probably be set up by Zoom. And then if there is a need for a third meeting, we'll also do so after we get feedback from the public. But we're also working to make sure we get bus stop locations identified and work with Public Works to potentially work through the installation of those bus stops. And then finally, we need to prepare our schedules and prepare our staff, all of our drivers, supervisors, mechanics, for the impending changes. We're going to be a pretty robust outreach that Kyle will be undertaking over the next month or so, make sure that we get the word out about all the changes. So with that, we're going to kind of pause here and open it up and get questions from the media.
Thanks, Garland, and thanks, Jim. And I just want to touch on when those meetings are posted, our viewers, if you'd like to register for that meeting, you can go to charlottesville.gov/Zoom, and we will post those as soon as they're ready. And if we're ready for the media, then yeah, if you'd like to raise your hand, all of our media representatives, and we'll go with the question format, an initial question and a follow-up as time permits. And our first question is from Allison Rabel. Allison, you're on with the panel. Go ahead.
Hi, everyone. I guess this is maybe a question for Garland. Can you talk a little bit about what I guess public outreach or how these changes were decided on? It sounds like a lot of public outreach is going to be happening in July, kind of about the new routes already, but can you talk about what went into deciding a lot of these changes? I know you mentioned kind of this is an initial step and there's other studies going on, and I know a lot of work, and I've listened to you speak about it at the RTP meetings, but I don't know if you can talk a little bit about what data or decisions were used to make these proposed changes.
Sure. Jim, if you got time to pull up, can Jim share his screen to pull up the database that we use to look at the ridership? While we're doing that, I'll kind of just talk through. Do you know which one I'm talking about, Jim?
Would that be in the presentation, Garland, or would that be?
No, he actually, we actually did a little deep dive with some information that we collected via through our contract with Kimley Horn and Kinetics. We actually hired another third-party group that actually put some temporary APCs on our vehicles so we could get real. APCs are automatic passenger counters. So we use that data to kind of look, do a deep dive as to where individuals were getting on and getting off, so we can also get a better gauge as to kind of real life, real-time ridership. But getting to Allison's question, one of the things we wanted to do is kind of look at past history, seeing where prior to the pandemic, where we were having issues with low ridership. We know for a fact that systems that aren't changing are in fact declining. So we need to keep up with activity centers as they move and change. So one of the parts that we wanted to do here is the deep dive into making sure that we could change our system, make sure we don't miss any coverage areas, so we don't want to leave anyone behind, but we want to adjust the system to make it easier and more readily available for individuals. Frequencies have a lot to do with whether people will potentially use our system or not. So getting our frequencies better was a major push. But one of the things Jim did was, once we got the APC information, was take a real hard look at the areas where we know individuals were using it and where they weren't using it. So as an urban system, we are designed to do mass transit. So where there were pockets where we had one or two individuals, we were basically spending a lot of resources for not basically, and a lot of resources and not really helping anyone, one or two individuals. We're trying to get the system so it affects the majority of the people, the masses, and get them to where they need to be in the quickest manageable way we possibly can. So I'm going to pause here and let Jim go through a couple of these slides.
Yeah, hopefully this, as Garland mentioned, there's been a lot of data collected last year in advance of this study with some units that were put on the buses to count the number of people getting on and off, at each stop. So this is a tool that we developed where you're able to look at ridership and slice and dice it however you want in terms of looking at how many people are getting on and how many people are getting off by route, by time of day. We can, look at it by hour, by stop. We looked at how the routes are performing in terms of on-time performance. We looked at ridership trends in terms of, from summer to fall to summer, what the ridership was looking at like. We did we pulled census data and looked at, population characteristics, age over 65, minority, disability, all these kinds of characteristics along routes. So we really tried, these recommendations were really based on a lot of this data analytics to get to the point of getting feedback from the public that Carlin was talking about.
Allison, did you have a follow-up?
I noticed even on that first map you showed, and a lot of the route changes have buses going to Fashion Square and that area now, where I think maybe before there was 2 routes that went up that way and directly touched on Fashion Square. Can you talk a little bit about, it looked like there was a lot of people getting on and off in that area. Can you talk a little bit about if you know why that is, or why the additions of more routes going there was made, if that makes sense?
Yeah, I guess that's because that Fashion Square Mall is kind of I think going through a chapter 11 or 13. So part of what we the system, if you look at how we're designed, we're almost like a hub and spoke system, where it's designed around getting major activity centers, collection points where we can have time transfers. That's just a location that is kind of convenient that allows us to have 3 or 4 vehicles, Fashion Square. So, and because we don't own a permanent place ourselves up on 29, this is kind of the logical place that allow us to basically have 3 or 4 vehicles for time transfers.
Okay, and our next question is from, Sean Tubbs. Sean, you're on with the panel. Go ahead. Sean, are you there? I want to check the mute. Well, while we wait for Sean to chime in, we have no other hands raised. If you guys would like to offer any other information about the route changes.
We just want to make sure that the media is aware of the changes, because we want to make sure that the public knows that we're doing everything we can to make sure the system is productive as it possibly can and convenient as we possibly can make it. In the interim, now the region will be working on a regional vision plan. So there may be systematic changes that will happen there. This, I think, would probably use, as a kind of a foundational document. That doesn't mean that the changes that are proposed here are in stone. As we work through with the region, I think one of the efforts there would be to, potentially look at the system in totality and say, if you were building a system from scratch, what would it look like? So that's part of the effort that will happen here. What we're doing right now is we have a robust older system that needed some fine tuning to allow us to prevent further decline in ridership. So this was kind of our effort, and then we kind of step 1 and step 2 work with the region, and step 3 is make the implementation of all those changes. And hopefully the end results will be a very high performing system that this region and the state can be proud of.
Thanks, Garland. And it looks like you've have some more inquiries here.
Sure.
But I would like to go back to Sean, if you're there with us. Sean, can you hear us? All right, Sean, well, we'll try you after a few more questions. Next up, we have Christopher Hawk. Chris, you're on with the panel. Go ahead.
Hello, everyone. This is Chris Hawk with the Piedmont Environmental Council. Thanks for the very informative update. It's great to see you all staying on top of the lines and making additions and amendments where needed. I may have missed this because I was a few minutes late, but I was wondering if there are any discussions or plans for potentially extending a line north of Fashion Square up towards Forest Lakes and Hollymead Town Center at any point?
So part of that will probably, well, first, let me just say, CAT is open to providing transportation anywhere. All we need is for the jurisdictions to tell us, let's go, provide funding, and we'll make it happen. But that decision has to be at the jurisdiction level, not with CAT. As the region works through its model, I'm assuming that will be on the table. So I would say that at this point, it was not on our, on our to-do list or, as a target area at this point. But that is not to say in the future, next year or so, 2 years, that area won't be kind of a new test bed for public transportation.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Williams. That's very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thanks, Chris. And we have another question from Allison Rabel. Allison, you're back on with the panel. Go ahead.
Hi, I'm going to ask Sean's question. He has emailed it to me. Okay.
Appreciate that. Thank you, Allison.
No problem. There will be changes again in the coming years once the regional transit vision is done. When do you anticipate those changes being made?
Well, so giving kind of my history of coming from Richmond at the GRTC transit system, the regional plan there was about 2 years. So it took about a year, 14 months or so for the planning effort part of it. And then the actual analysis and the fine tuning of where I met Kinetics Transportation, Jim Baker, helping us to work through the fine tuning efforts of once the planning is done, you actually have to go and take the plan and make it a reality. So I anticipate, it's a smaller system. There will still be an effort probably here, probably at least a year, and then about 6 to 8 months after that for implementation, probably.
Great.
Thanks, Allison. While we have you on the line, did you have a follow-up?
Yes, and kind of touching on that a little bit, in your experience with other systems, what are some of the best practices for dealing with getting riders used to the new system? Sean says that the ridership decline here dates back to the last major route change in around 2013 or 2014.
So part of it is a sustained effort to let them know that the changes are coming. And then once they're implemented, we got to continue to nail home the fact that they're out there. And when we achieve some level of success, we want to tell everybody about it. So there's a lot of communication and a lot of advertising that needs to happen. That's one of the goals that you have to have, and it's kind of fundamental to new service. Without it, you can have the best plan in the world. If nobody knows about it, nobody's going to use it. So one of the things you will see from us over the next 3 to 4 months as we put this in, and then are probably a sustained marketing campaign over the next year to really nail home the changes that we put in place in early September.
And with that, I do not see any other hands raised. So that will conclude our media Q&A. And Kyle, I'll hand it back over to you for any final comments from our panel.
Okay. Does anybody have any additional comments? from our panel? If not, I thank everybody for participating and sharing this journey with us as we seek improvements to the system. Really looking forward to the future. There's a lot of big things coming for CAT. And if no one has any additional remarks, I think we can wrap it up. And like Joe had stated before, charlottesville.gov/Zoom, you can look for the meetings there. And also we will have them posted on our news feed on our website at catchthecat.org.
Great. Thanks, Kyle. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.